My concern during this time is that seniors are being mostly portrayed as weak and frail and vulnerable and basically waiting to pass. I think the story of our beautiful seniors is much more and bigger and more glorious to show and portray this beautiful golden generation.
Today on Context, our largest urban centers have shown us we are facing a crisis of long-term care for seniors, and COVID-19 has been the terrible pandemic which showed just how dire some long-term care homes are in our big cities. We all stand on the shoulders of those marvelous seniors that built this country, and to find that in a pandemic, that the places that need our help most are going understaffed. It's a crisis you'll hear about today, but first, to the most tranquil rural area of Canada and the most shocking of mass shootings.
We are a country that stands united in our effort to defeat a pandemic, to save lives, and to help each other make it to a better day. But yesterday, we were jolted from that common cause by the senseless violence and tragedy in Nova Scotia.
Today is a devastating day for Nova Scotia, and it will remain etched in the minds of many for years to come.
When stuff like this happens, we got to rally together as people, loved ones in the community, and just show everybody that, bad things happen, but we're still good people over there, right?
It is the deadliest mass shooting in the history of our country. Police report the death toll has risen to 19 people as of this recording. People murdered in Nova Scotia by a gunman who opened fire over several hours. The death toll includes RCMP Constable Heidi Stevenson, a wife and mother of 2 young children, so many others grieving for this great loss of life. I asked Archbishop Anthony Mancini of Halifax, Yarmouth, his words for us at this time.
Well, to one and all, I want to offer and express personal condolences to all those who have been affected, particularly to the RCMP officer who died in the line of duty, to all of her fellow officers who continue to work hard at protecting us. This came as a shock that came upon us as we are struggling through another kind of shock. So Easter this year has been a very unusual and very difficult experience for those of us caught up with the reality of trying to deal with life and death issues. And of course, the message that has been on my mind for quite some weeks now is to be a message of hope, to all who are struggling with these unprecedented times. And here we are now living in the reality of the worst mass killings in Canadian history. And it's happening, and it has happened here in Nova Scotia. So the shock is just absolutely amazing, and I want to wish everyone, in spite of it all, the hope that comes from our faith in Jesus Christ.
What would God have us do next after such a tragedy like this?
Pray for one another, and to provide all of the possible care that we can to those who are grieving. As Christians, our primary reason for even existing is that we have a belief that stares death in the face. It is the heart of the Christian message that life is changed, not ended, through death. And so caring for one another in whatever way we can, given the limitations and restrictions that are upon us because of the COVID-19, caring for one another becomes more difficult at this time, but it's not impossible. And so I would say that God would expect us to provide encouragement, consolation, and support through whatever means we can use to communicate our grief, but also our sense of conviction that life, in spite of everything, is greater than death.
Father, what would you say in closing for a consolation to your community?
Well, we are here. We pray with you. We are concerned for all those who have been hurt and who will be grieving for a long time. And so I offer to one and all the consolation of our faith and our solidarity in this particular time.
Archbishop Anthony Mancini of Nova Scotia, thank you so much.
Thank you for asking.
When we return, we hear the crisis that COVID-19 has caused in long-term care seniors' homes, and from those working for a solution. And now to the other crisis we're going to feature on today's show, but sadly this one has been long in the making. In the densely populated areas of Canada, seniors' homes have been finding that they are vastly understaffed and ill-equipped for the pandemic. These homes were not ready for the battle against COVID-19, and it's been long-term care, not hospitals, that have been the epicenter of Canada's outbreak. Looking for answers, I spoke with Dr. Samir Sinha. He's an advisor on long-term care to government and the director of geriatrics at Sinai Health System.
You shocked me in the beginning of this pandemic when you said if you had your own parents in senior care, long-term care in Ontario, you would pull them out now. Would you still do that?
I'll be honest, right now, I'm really concerned about the state of long-term care right now. And at the time, I had started sounding the alarm when there were only a handful of homes in Ontario in outbreak. We're now about 150 or close to 200 homes that are now in outbreak across Ontario. And I've been working very closely with the Minister of Long-Term Care, Dr. Fullerton, and the government to try and help the government stay or keep up, if you will, with the science and the evidence that actually says this is what we need to be doing to best support people in long-term care and prevent this virus from getting in and spreading, within homes. But right now, we're not winning the battle. Right now, we know that more homes are continually going into outbreak and people are dying. And so when I actually, if you, Lorna, asked me, as a respected journalist, like, what would you do? People ask me this question all the time, as a doctor, what would you do if this was your family member? I'd say that if you had the ability and could care for a loved one at home, with other supports, then this is something that you may want to consider. And I'll tell you, many families have actually been doing this in Ontario, and it's why the government in Ontario actually changed its regulations a number of weeks ago to support families who wanted to actually do this and who could. The key issue is, Lorna, yeah.
Yes. What is, like, because there are some bottom line things you need to have to be able to take a loved one home.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the key issue, Lorna, is, let's be realistic here. And many of my families, who've actually made the difficult decision by having their loved ones go into care, they didn't do this issue glibly. These individuals need an incredible amount of care beyond, in those situations, what the family could actually provide and what they could do. And so for many families right now, they are agonizing right now in Ontario and beyond, because they're saying, you know, my mom's home isn't an outbreak, but maybe it'll be next. And maybe she'll be at risk of death. And I feel enormously guilty that my loved one's in care, and I feel like I can't visit them. I can't do anything more for them. Am I supposed to sit here and wait? And that's why my number one focus right now is saying, how do we at least make these homes as safe as possible? What can we do to protect people in these homes? But for those families, for example, who say, and we have many families who are saying right now, I'm not employed, or right now the kids are home from university, and it's killing us that we can't see our loved one. And you know what? Up until a few months ago or a few years ago, we were doing all the care 24/7 with limited government supports and everything else available. And we actually could do this now. So these are highly personalized decisions. And so one of the things that I've done is to support families across Ontario and beyond in this need, is partnered with the University of Ottawa's hospitals, their Health Research Institute, so Dr. Stacey Dawn there. And we've actually created decision aids for families who are grappling with this decision. And so if you go to decision aid and type in Ottawa, if you type in those three words.
We'll put that link right with
exactly
you on the show.
And if
here.
you put that in, exactly, thank you. And if we actually do that, this is how families can go through and figure out what's right for them, because these are not easy decisions, and not every family is going to be able to make this decision. But what we're saying is, for those families who want to, the government has actually made it easy for ones to take their loved ones out of care, not be penalized when it's time to return them to care. I have my colleagues right now who are saying, I'm happy to go in and feed people if that's what they need. I know that I'm a doctor who could do much more highly skilled work, but frankly, right now, it doesn't matter if you have two hands and a brain. You know, right now, this is the level of care in which we're just trying to connect people and residents with, because that's what the homes are asking for.
Take care there on the front line. Take care, sir.
Thank you very much, Lorna.
Okay, so from Dr. Sinha on those crisis lines, of course, that makes me think of my mother in long-term care, and you're probably thinking of your parents. My mother is 91, and she lives in British Columbia's largest seniors facility, Menno Place. They have 700 beds, 650 staff, and as a daughter, one of the staff that I really treasure there is the chaplain, Ingrid Schultz, and she joins us now.
Tell us about this devotional streaming, these chaplain services that you are streaming into their rooms.
Every single morning of weekday morning, from Monday to Friday, we stream prayers from the Menno Hospital Chapel. And that goes into all of the rooms of the 350 residents in the apartments or assisted living, and into all the long-term care rooms and lounges at Menno Home and Menno Hospital. The Tuesday prayer time is the staff prayer, which we've always had every Tuesday morning at 9, but now the whole campus watches it as that camera is on us as we gather to pray. And I think that gives a sense that we're taking all the steps that we need to take to physically distance, but we're not spiritually distancing. We are connected, and our person who tracks who all is watching, saying more people are watching the chaplain programs than ever.
And you have been doing, they're really like Skype in love-ins, right? Like I could call in and then you read it to you as a team, you gown up and you go to the door of our family members and you read this to them. Tell us the impact of being able to bring greetings from children who we can't get in.
And Lorna, as you can imagine, one of the most difficult things for the residents and for their families is that they can't come in to visit now. And so one of our staff, Sharon Simpson, who's with communications, came up with the idea of messages of love, where family members can send messages, but also color pictures of themselves that get printed out, and several times a week as these come in, We take them to the residents. The recreation staff helps with this, the chaplains help. We deliver that message. We stand outside the door. We're wearing our mask and our goggles. We don't go into the room, but we read that message. We show that picture, and then we give that for them to keep. But it gives such a sense of being connected.
What about the spiritual care of the workers? Because as we speak, as I said, no outbreak, not one COVID death.
Yes.
And yet you have the same frontline tensions of every other home in this country. How are they doing the nurses and the orderlies?
Yes, it's been a challenging time for all the staff, and we're hearing about people having trouble sleeping at night. I can relate to that in these days, even as I'm wanting to trust God in that. And a lot of us are experiencing something that's called ambiguous grief. We're grieving already. And we don't know why we're feeling that sadness. Why is it hard sleeping? Why? We know there's anxiety, but behind that is grief. We've lost our routines. So as we're aware of that as chaplains, we can address that grieving that's happened and ask people how they're doing, and encourage them to be gentle with themselves, to be aware that they're in a time of grieving, even if they can't name it as grief.
Ingrid, how important is the spiritual care of a person in long-term care at a time like this?
I feel that it's at the center, and it always has been that for Menno Place, that as our physical ability diminishes, our longing for connection with God and others expands. That's something I learned right at the start of becoming a chaplain to elders. And so to be able to address that need, that longing for connection, and when things are accelerated with the fears that come around COVID-19, the longing to know that God is with us, that God remembers us, that we're not abandoned.
Ingrid, thank you for reminding us of that. You are also streaming all the local church services into my mom's room and everybody's rooms. He's gone to more church. Thank you for the wonderful work that you guys are doing there in Abbotsford, British Columbia at the Menno Home. Thank you.
In facing the national crisis on senior care for COVID, the Métis National Council took a different approach. Here's Vice President of the National Council, David Chartrand.
In all of our culture, you take care of your elders first, no matter what. And so our campaign immediately was that when we looked at COVID, for example, we knew the world was telling us and countries were telling us the hardest hit were the seniors, the elders. If they were to get captured under the COVID virus, the likelihood of many of them, chances are they may die. So the record was not yet showing the young people or middle age, was definitely focused on, which for us was an issue anyway, because we would be protecting our elders no matter what. Our seniors would be priority number one for us to make sure we put protections in place and programs in service. So if we want them to stay home, we want them to stay in isolation, and we expect them to stay there, then we needed to put a campaign together, which we bought the resources, essentials, foods, and all the rest of the supplies. Many have chronic illness, quite a large chronic illness. And so we had to make sure their prescriptions were delivered right to their houses. So we put a massive campaign right across the province, and we started immediately. Now we actually do a phone follow-up campaign. We're doing our second now tranche of essentials and foods to them, because over 2 weeks have gone by. And now we're doing a second round for quite a number of thousands of them.
How have the Métis been able to keep your people out of these long-term care placements?
Well, it's again, it goes back, and it was different. Even, for example, my mother passed away. One of the things my mom said to me, never put me in there, and I never would, never allow it. It's a lot of our citizens actually are kept because of family. They're kept in the culture. They're kept in home, and that is a significant aspect of our culture that ensures that our families. It's our duty. It's our responsibility. They raised us. They They took care of us. They put us to where we are. It's our job now to take care of them. So many of them, of course, don't go in personal care homes. We used to call it granny shacks. We'd had onto our houses to have a place for them to stay, so they stay with the children. The only time we'd be forced to, if it was an health issue, which we needed, of course, medical staff to take care of it. Otherwise, most of our families keep their parents at home.
Wow. And now you are mobilizing to actually make emergency barracks should your people be affected. You've refitted the construction outfits. Tell us about this campaign.
Well, there's several fronts we had to look at, and this is 3 months in the works. Like before, when we heard about it already out in China, we already started talking about our Métis cabinet and our own government. We started saying, what if this thing comes our way? What are we going to be doing? So we looked at our resources, looked at what we had in front of us, and we decided to say, like, we have some tools. We don't have many, but we have some. If we're wise with it, we can definitely make a big impact. But we did a quick analysis too, in the stats that just came out from Statistics Canada shows again Métis are struggling in the housing sectors, overcrowding, not enough rooms in the house. So then you're expecting these people to stay isolated if anybody gets affected or something occurs. You're expecting people, then you go into an isolation in your house. How can you when there's 10 of you in a 2-bedroom house? Where do you go to get isolated? So what we end up doing is actually buying, which is called tiny homes. They're isolation units. We bought them from British Columbia. We had 5 of them, and we're ready to move mobile or anywhere in the province. And so if any community is affected, we're ready to move 5 of them in that community immediately to take the person out of the house, put them in isolation unit. But we said to ourselves, what if it gets bigger? What if it blows up like we see in Quebec right now? And what if it happens in our personal care homes? You see it blowing up. So you said, what if it happens in one of our villages? Because we don't have health centers. We don't have clinics as Métis people. We don't have any health staff as Métis people because we're caught in a jurisdictional limbo. Who's responsible? Is it the federal government responsible for the Métis, which Daniel said in 2015 Supreme Court decision, or is it the province? So we said to ourselves, we need our own plan. So we looked at our construction camps and we said, look, here's an opportunity. We own 3 camps that we did because we have run a lot of businesses. We're very business people, strong business people. And so we put together these camps. Now we have a 140-bed facility ready to go. We are completely ready for pandemic explosion that we can move and quarantine our citizens. But this is what we've done. This is the capture of our Métis government. We said it's not just for us. If it doesn't affect us, then we need to help Manitobans. We need to help other communities. We need to help other citizens. And if the province wants to partner with us, then we'll partner. But if they don't want to partner with us, we're still willing to help anyone, First Nations, non-Indigenous people. If there's an impact in their villages, we're willing to use our 3 camps ready to take action and bring them in there and fully equipped with gymnasiums. It's got TV, it's got computers, it's got food, it's got kitchens, it's got everything. So we're ready to do it.
David Chartrand, thank you for inspiring us.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Coming up, a Coptic priest who specializes in family and cultural issues has some advice for how we can do better. Well, let's get some good advice for senior care. I spoke with Father Pishoy Salama. He's a cultural and family specialist from St. Maurice and St. Verena Coptic Orthodox Church.
My concern during this time is that seniors are being mostly portrayed as weak and frail and vulnerable and basically waiting to pass. The images that dominate the media are those of long-term seniors' homes and those who have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But I think the story of our beautiful seniors is much more and bigger and more glorious to show and portray this beautiful golden generation.
How do we do that? What are we missing?
I think we need to acknowledge the impact that this amazing generation has had on our culture, on our families, our homes, and there's so much that they have offered to us as Canadians that we need to acknowledge and highlight, especially during this time.
Like, how do you break through? The messages are so bleak. We are so appalled at what feels like almost a warehousing of them as we realize the staffing frontline crisis around them. How do we break through?
And every one of us has been impacted by a senior, an elder. The closest example to my mind would be my own parents. They've been married for 55 years. My father is turning 80 in just a couple of months. I'm not even going to mention how old is my mother because I'll be in trouble. But they're living independently. They're still contributing to the community of faith. They're still working in their family business. And they're just a great example for me personally. And this is not just an isolated story. I meet so many seniors who are still mobile, who are volunteering, who are helping, who are inspiring the next generations to live faithfully, but also to care for others.
So how would we reset the clock? Like as you look at, and let's call it the chaos it has been, as people try to figure out how do we properly reshape and restaff the crisis lines, what would be your advice for families trying to help?
I think we have to acknowledge that this pandemic has impacted mostly our seniors. So we have to continue caring for them. And I'd like to encourage everyone to call one of their beloved seniors to check up on them. But not every senior is in a long-term home. There are many seniors, who are junior seniors, if we can call them, those who are still mobile, who can do so much to serve or to minister to other seniors. I think more stories in the media that shows the history, but also how amazing it is to be with seniors who are living at home or independently, how they're inspiring next generations. Like my own children have been impacted by my parents. We have to continue highlighting the values and the strengths and all the beautiful gifts that God has given to this beautiful generation.
All right. Father Pishoy Salama, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as we close another of our COVID specials, so many people to thank that are busy doing their best in this. We always end with a thank you to our wardrobe sponsor, Frida. She's busy sewing masks in this time. Thank you, Frida, for that. And of course, thank you to everyone who's caring, especially for our seniors in those long-term care homes. And we end with thinking of those wonderful seniors and how they shaped our own lives and shaped this country. That was our full show. That's posted every Thursday on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get our weekly episodes and web exclusives.